All right, so are you ready to dive into a story that's wild?
I am definitely ready.
We're talking about the Lufthansa Heist, 1978 at JFK Airport.
Ah, classic.
This one, well, the information comes from the Wikipedia article on the Lufthansa Heist.
Right.
But hold on, because we're talking about $5.875 million just disappearing, just poof.
Yeah, that's a lot of cash.
The biggest cash robbery in the U.S. at the time. But the real story.
What happened after?
What happened after is even crazier.
Yeah, things went a little sideways.
Just a little bit. So, okay, let's break this whole thing down, starting with the setup.
Yeah.
It seems like this whole elaborate scheme was set in motion by just a simple tip.
That's right, yeah. A tip from an airport worker. His name was Louis Werner, and he was, well, let's just say he owed some money to a bookmaker, gambling debts, you know how it goes.
Oh, yeah, I've seen those movies.
Desperate times, right.
Desperate times.
So Werner, he knew all the ins and outs of JFK and realized that Lufthansa flights were bringing in a massive amounts of cash, untraceable cash.
And this wasn't just some random idea he had, right? Werner had actually been involved in a smaller heist like a couple of years before this, where he managed to steal $22,000.
Yeah, so he wasn't exactly a rookie. He knew the system, knew where the weaknesses were.
He had done his research.
Exactly. And that's where James Burke comes in, a major figure in the Lucchese crime family.
Okay, so we're talking organized crime here.
Oh, absolutely. This was big-time stuff. Burke was the brains behind this whole operation. Saw a golden opportunity in Werner's tip.
Well, I mean, organized crime was pretty ingrained in New York City back then. This heist kind of fits into that bigger picture.
Yeah, it does. For Burke, this was his chance to make a real splash. He puts together this crew, assigns everyone specific roles. You've got Tommy DeSimone, Angelo Sepe, Louis Cafora, Joe Manry, Paolo Lucastri, Robert McMahon. Even Burke's own son got roped into driving one of the backup vehicles.
Yeah, the whole family. What a legacy.
Yeah. Each member of the crew was promised a cut, you know, like anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000, depending on their role.
That's quite a spread.
It is.
But here's the thing. Those figures they were based on, like an initial estimate of only $2 million.
Yeah.
Way less than what they actually got away with.
Yeah, it goes to show the level of risk these guys were dealing with. And the uncertainty. Imagine underestimating your haul by almost $4 million.
Talk about leaving money on the table.
Right.
So the night arrives. December 11th, 1978.
Heist night.
Walk me through how this actually went down.
All right, so picture this. It's around 3 a.m. A black Ford Econoline van pulls up to the Lufthansa cargo terminal.
Okay.
Inside, 6 masked men, gloves on, adrenaline pumping. They're about to pull off one of the most audacious heists in American history. They cut the gate's padlock, and thanks to Werner's inside knowledge, they basically waltz right past the entire security system.
So they made it look easy.
Like a well-oiled machine.
I'm picturing it now.
Once inside, they rounded up all the employees, herded them into the lunchroom, and went straight for the prize. 72 15-pound cartons, all filled with untraceable cash, just sitting there in the vault.
Wow, like taking candy from a baby.
Almost. In and out in under 90 minutes.
That's incredible. But their success really hinged on a few things.
Oh, for sure.
The element of surprise, meticulous planning, and of course, Werner, knowing that layout, that routine, like the back of his hand.
Couldn't have done it without him. And they were smart about the little details, too. Like, they told the hostages not to call the police until 4:30 a.m.
Oh, to buy themselves some time.
Exactly. Some valuable time to make their escape.
Smart thinking. Attention to detail. But as we all know, things didn't exactly go to plan after that. This is where the story starts to get a little darker.
Yeah, it unraveled pretty quickly.
What happened?
Well, the getaway driver, Parnell, they called him Stax Edwards, made a critical mistake. Didn't get rid of the van properly.
Wait, he just left it there?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Parked it right in front of his girlfriend's apartment. The police found it within days. Edwards' fingerprints were everywhere. The FBI connected the dots back to Burke's crew in no time.
Oh, so that's how it all starts to fall apart.
Yeah, it sent a wave of panic through the whole operation. And, tragically, triggered a series of events that, well, let's just say they didn't end well for a lot of people.
So Burke, known for being cautious, starts to get paranoid, suspects everyone around him,
Right.
starts thinking the only way to protect himself is to silence anyone who could possibly link him back to the heist.
Yeah, that's what happens when paranoia sets in. It's a classic example of how the world of organized crime can turn on itself. Loyalty goes out the window when self-preservation kicks in.
A dog-eat-dog world.
You could say that. And sadly, a lot of the victims, they were his own associates. people he had worked with, people he knew.
So let's talk about some of those victims and how they fit into all this. We've got Edwards himself. He was taken care of just a week after the robbery.
Right.
Then there's Martin Krugman, the bookmaker, who gave Werner the tip in the first place.
Right. Krugman started getting greedy, demanded his cut. Burke got nervous, thought he might go to the FBI, decided to silence him. It's a harsh reminder of how greed and the ruthlessness of the criminal world can lead to some pretty tragic ends.
Then you've got Richard Eaton, a con man Burke believed had cheated him in a drug deal,
Right.
and Tom Monteleone, a restaurateur.
Right.
Burke suspected him of skimming money.
Yeah.
Both brutally murdered.
The violence just kept escalating. Then there was Louis Kafora, a parking lot owner involved in some money laundering schemes, and his wife, Joanna. They were both killed, too.
And it doesn't stop there.
Yeah.
Joe Menery and Robert McMahon, both airport workers connected to the heist, they turned up dead. And then there's Paolo Licastri,
Right.
a liaison from the Gambino family who was supposed to be overseeing the whole operation. His body was found on a burning trash heap.
It's a grim picture, isn't it? But it shows just how far Burke was willing to go to protect himself. And even with all this violence, all this bloodshed, the money, the millions they stole, never recovered.
Vanished into thin air.
It's like it never existed.
That's crazy. And all the investigations, they couldn't definitively link Burke to the heist.
Nope. They had their suspicions, but that's all they were. There were investigations, wiretaps, surveillance. But in the end, only one person was ever convicted. Louis Werner, the airport worker who provided the tip.
So the Lufthansa heist, it remains a captivating mystery, even after all these years. What is it about this particular heist that continues to capture the public imagination?
Well, it's a story that's been immortalized in movies, like Goodfellas. It's inspired countless books, documentaries. It's got all the elements of a classic crime drama. A daring heist, a colorful cast of characters, a trail of bodies, and a fortune that disappeared without a trace.
It's got it all. Ambition, betrayal, the dark side of the American dream.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder what really happened to all that money.
It really does make you wonder.
It does.
We were just talking about the Lufthansa heist and how it all just unraveled so quickly, and the murders that followed. Really makes you think about how things can go wrong in the world of organized crime. There are rarely happy endings there.
No, not usually. The Lufthansa heist, as carefully planned as it was, shows just how fragile those criminal empires can be. The paranoia, the infighting, the desperate scramble to cover their tracks, it all just spirals out of control.
And right at the center of it all was James Burke. Can we take a closer look at him? Who was this guy who masterminded this daring heist and then unleashed such brutality to protect himself?
Burke was a complicated guy, and to be honest, a pretty terrifying figure. They called him Jimmy the Gent because he was known to tip generously.
Ironic.
Yeah, he was both respected and feared within the Lucchese crime family. He ran his operations out of this unassuming bar in Queens called Robert's Lounge, used it as his unofficial headquarters.
It's kind of hard to believe that a notorious criminal can blend in so seamlessly.
Burke was a master of deception and compartmentalization. He could be charming one minute and utterly ruthless the next. He built a network of loyal associates, but he wouldn't think twice about eliminating anyone he saw as a threat.
So in the end, it was his paranoia that brought him down. He saw enemies everywhere, even among his closest confidants. What a way to live.
The FBI, even though they could never directly tie Burke to the Lufthansa heist, they were pretty convinced that he was behind all the murders that came after. He was finally convicted in 1985, but not for the heist itself. They got him for the murder of Richard Eaton, that Florida con man we talked about earlier.
So Burke's story ends in prison, but the mystery of the Lufthansa heist remains unsolved. Those missing millions have fueled all sorts of theories. What are some of the ideas floating around about what happened to the money?
Some folks think it was spent quickly, funneled into other criminal ventures, or just blown on lavish lifestyles. Others believe it was stashed away somewhere, maybe buried or hidden, just waiting to be found.
I even heard a rumor about some of the money being lost in a high-stakes poker game.
Yeah, the legendary poker game theory. Makes for a good story, but there's no real evidence to support it.
The Lufthansa heist, even after all these years, is still such an intriguing mystery. It's like something out of a movie. A daring heist, a cast of colorful characters, a string of murders, and a fortune that vanishes without a trace. And to make things even more interesting, there were new developments in the case back in 2014, right?
Oh, yeah. Vincent Asaro, a Caco in the Bonanno crime family, was arrested and charged with taking part in the heist. The authorities said they had new evidence connecting Asaro to the crime, including testimony from a cooperating witness. It seemed like they were finally going to break the case wide open.
That must have been a big deal after all those years. What happened at the trial?
Well, the trial didn't quite go as planned. The prosecution's case relied heavily on the testimony of Asaro's cousin, Gaspar Valenti, who had a pretty extensive criminal record himself. The defense argued that Valenti wasn't a credible witness and was only cooperating to get a lighter sentence for himself.
So, was Asaro ever convicted?
He was acquitted of all charges. The mystery of the Lufthansa heist continued. It was a big disappointment for law enforcement. It seemed like the Lufthansa heist would just fade into the annals of unsolved crimes, a testament to the enduring power of organized crime, their ability to operate in the shadows and evade justice.
So what's the takeaway here? What have we learned from this deep dive into the Lufthansa heist?
I think on one level, it's a cautionary tale about the allure of easy money and the dangers that come with it. The people involved in this heist, driven by greed and ambition, ultimately paid a very high price. Many of them lost their lives, others ended up behind bars, and the stolen millions, if they were ever recovered, brought nothing but trouble.
It really highlights the dark side of organized crime. The Lufthansa heist gives us this glimpse into how the mob operates, their codes of silence, the ruthless pursuit of power, and the casual brutality that was part of their world.
But on a deeper level, I think the Lufthansa heist speaks to our fascination with unsolved mysteries. Those missing millions, they represent more than just money. They symbolize the allure of the unknown, the possibility that there are secrets out there still waiting to be uncovered.
It keeps us on the edge of our seats because it reminds us that even in a world with all this technology, advanced surveillance, some mysteries might never be solved. But there's another side to this story that we haven't touched on yet.
Oh, what's that?
We've talked about the victims, the people whose lives were tragically cut short because of Burke's paranoia. But what about the families of those victims, the loved ones they left behind?
That's a good point. You know, for them, the Lufthansa heist wasn't just some big news story. It was a personal tragedy, something that caused them real pain and left them with so many questions.
It makes you think about the real impact of these crimes, the ripple effect that goes way beyond the people who are directly involved.
Absolutely. Their lives were changed forever by what happened that night.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Lufthansa heist, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from all of this?
I think it's this. The Lufthansa heist, while it's definitely a fascinating historical event, it's more than just a true crime story. You know, it's a warning about greed, ambition, and how seductive the criminal world can be, but also how dangerous.
Well said. And for our listeners out there, if you're interested in learning more about this infamous crime and the people involved, there are tons of resources out there, books, documentaries, even fictional accounts inspired by the heist.
Yeah, the Lufthansa heist, even though it's still shrouded in mystery, it gives us a glimpse into this world that often operates just out of sight, a world where fortunes are made and lost, and lives can be snuffed out in an instant.
It's a reminder that even in our modern world, with all its technology and interconnectedness, there are still secrets out there, mysteries to be pondered, stories that continue to fascinate and haunt us.
And who knows, maybe someday someone will stumble upon that missing money or a long-lost confession will surface and finally reveal the truth about what happened to the Lufthansa loot.
Until then, the legend of the Lufthansa heist lives on a testament to the enduring power of unsolved mysteries. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time for another fascinating exploration into the unknown.